Before we dive into these spine-chilling stories, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of the terrifying tales we have in store for you. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, only to see your cat walk into your bedroom, but something about it doesn't feel right. Before you know it, a shadowy figure appears in the doorway, someone you don't recognize. That's exactly what happened to me one cold night, and it turned into a terrifying escape. I'll never forget that. It was a summer night when I was about 4 or 5 years old. My parents had recently separated, and I was staying at my mom's apartment. We lived on the first floor and I had my own room, but I preferred to sleep in her bed when I was there. Her bedroom had a window above the headboard, and it was open that night, letting in the cool night air. Around midnight, I woke up feeling uneasy. I sat up in bed and noticed something strange. Our cat, who normally slept with us, was sitting at the door looking out into the hallway. It was odd because the cat never left the bed at night. I watched as it walked into my room, meowing softly. That I turned to my mom to wake her, but before I could, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Standing in the doorway to my room was a man. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was just standing there, staring at us before he started moving away from the door and into the hallway. I don't know how my mom reacted so quickly, but she scooped me up and without hesitation, threw me out of the window. It wasn't far, it was only a short 3-foot drop to the ground, but in that moment, it felt like the longest fall of my life. My mom followed right behind me and we began screaming for help. We didn't know what was happening inside, but we knew we had to get out fast. Someone called 911, and when the police arrived, they found no sign of forced entry into the apartment. The only clue? Our front door, which had been locked with both a deadbolt and a chain lock, was wide open. A week later, my mom found a strange notebook hidden in our water heater closet, filled with names, drawings, and some discarded gum wrappers. The police speculated that the man had been hiding in our apartment, waiting until we fell asleep. Sometimes, the scariest part isn't the intruder you can see, it's the one hiding in plain sight, just waiting for the right moment. But what if the next story I'm about to tell you involves a nightmare far closer to home? Stick around. Imagine being home alone with just your sister for company, watching a true crime show, when suddenly the door slams, and that knock on the door is the last thing you ever expected. This is a true story of a night that started like any other, only to turn into something much darker. It was the late 80s or early 90s and I was just a child, around 6 or 7 years old. My older sister, who was 14 or 15, was babysitting me. We lived in a small Texas town where everyone knew everyone. On this particular night, we were curled up in the common room watching one of those true crime shows, something gritty and real like 60 Minutes or Hard Copy. We were watching a segment about a man who went on a brutal rampage, mutilating his neighbors and kidnapping their young daughter. As we sat there, a knock echoed from the front door. It was sharp and hard. Bow, bow, bow. It hit us both like a ton of bricks. We jumped, hearts pounding, but there was no sign of anyone outside when we checked. We thought it was just the wind. West Texas winds were notoriously strong, but then we heard something that froze us in place. The storm door outside our front door closed with a soft thud. That was impossible unless someone had opened it. We were paralyzed in fear. My sister crept toward the TV and turned it off, but the house felt eerily silent, except for the sound of our own breathing. We couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone anymore. Then it happened again. The back door handle rattled as if someone was trying to open it. The door was locked, but the rattling kept coming, followed by an unrelenting boom. Bow, bow. Someone was trying to force their way in. My sister screamed, and in that panic she grabbed me and dragged me into her bedroom. She slammed the door and threw whatever she could in front of it. She remembered the phone and frantically called for help. In the chaos, she accidentally dialed one of her friends, but thankfully they understood the urgency and rushed to our house. The police arrived shortly after, but by then there was no sign of anyone. The only clue was a few scuff marks on the back door. We never figured out who had come to our door or why, but it changed us forever. After that night, we never forgot to lock the doors again. Sometimes the fear doesn't come from the dark, but from the things we can't explain. What if there was someone watching from just beyond the door, waiting for the moment to strike? The next story is about an encounter that might make you think twice about the people you trust. Stay tuned. Have you ever felt the chill of someone's gaze, even when you couldn't see them? That's exactly what happened to me and my sister one night. It was just another typical evening in our small Texas home, until the world outside our doors began to feel much too close, and the knock that followed would send us spiraling into fear. It was the late 80s and I was about 6 or 7 years old. My sister, who was about 14 or 15, was watching over me that night. Our small home was nestled in the quiet of West Texas, where the winds could howl and the nights grew eerily still. We were just watching TV, one of those crime documentaries about kidnappings and murders, when something we thought was just a normal sound turned into a nightmare. As we watched the show, a loud bang on the front door echoed through the house. We both jumped out of our seats. My sister ran to check the door but saw nothing. But then something else happened. The storm door outside our front door closed. Whoever was out there had to have opened it. My sister slowly crawled over to the TV and turned it off, hoping silence would bring clarity. But instead, the silence only heightened the tension. Then it happened, again. The back door rattled. The handle turned, not with force but like someone was testing it, seeing if it would open. We held our breath, frozen in place. And then, as if to confirm our worst fears, the back door was yanked hard, over and over, the glass vibrating with each violent tug. My sister panicked. She dragged me into her bedroom, locked the door, and threw anything she could in front of it. Grabbing the phone, she called for help, but in her panic, she couldn't remember the sheriff's number. Instead, she hit redial, and thankfully one of her friends answered and raced to our house. By the time they arrived, the intruder was gone, but we never found out who it was. We never saw them again, but we knew one thing: we would never leave a door unlocked again. What if the person who knocks on your door isn't who they say they are? Sometimes the scariest thing about a knock isn't the noise, it's the person waiting behind it. And in our next story, the line between friend and foe gets dangerously blurry. You won't want to miss this one.